Willie Varela has been making personal, experimental films since 1971. This massive body of work includes environmental portraits, menacing omens, and experiments with abstract light forms. His films are informed by Chicano culture, Catholic iconography and ritual, and mass media, and are thus a nexus of regional identity, faith, and technological experience. In this, they transcend the boundaries of formal and social investigation. Varela has described his early Super 8 films as domestic in nature, concerned with the rhythm and the movements, the color and the light of daily life. Varela's films are a record of a life of closely examined visuality. Many of Varela's early films are abstract. In Becky's eye, a modulating colored light suggests at times a gradient iris, an inflamed sclera, and even when its rhythms are slowed, the image remains ambiguous. Becky's eye is also unique for its ambiguity. Here, light abstraction remains indicative of a concrete thing, an iris, a lash, just barely escaping perception. Such abstraction announced one theme of Varela's filmmaking, the expression of feeling, both spiritual and emotional, and of time, both mythic and present, through a transforming light. This theme carries forward into Varela's diaries, for example, in March 1979. Elusive silhouetted figures, refracted light forms, the leaves of houseplants, and the unrestrained bobbing of a caged bird combine as the collected impression of a single morning, a waking of the world. Ghost Town is a study of wrecked buildings. Varela's camera pans across the strange beauty of rusted metal, broken glass, and rotting wood. Eventually it discovers another symbol of time, a tree that Varela animates by his own dynamic movement. Recuerdos de flores muertas continues this theme of finding beauty and terror in a ruined environment. It's filmed in an old cemetery where Varela bears witness to the wounds, both sculpted and incidental, of sculptures of Christ that are missing fingers and hands. All of this is seen in the shadow of a highway overpass, and with the sounds of traffic and plane engines whirring in the distance. In Progress, among the most haunting of Varela's films, compiles scenes from medical films, observations of street life, scenes of protest in San Francisco, the resonance of Harvey Milk's assassination, and images from mass media of breakdancing, rocket launches, Ronald Reagan. All are bound by the characteristic skip of the television set's signal. Varela's camera captures street musicians and commuters cropped in the sharp and often mirrored surfaces of the San Francisco cityscape. The apocalyptic omens on the television cast a grim shadow, a shadow that is already upon us in the fracturing, dehumanizing witness, of Varela's own solitary protest march. As Varela moved on from Super 8 filmmaking and began to work with video from the 1990s onward, the spiritual and autobiographic concerns in his work remained, in contemplation of sacred and profane experience. His hidden presence continues the multiform found image construction of In Progress. A collage soundtrack of electronic beats, a distorting, looping horn, and a loop of the Velvet Underground accompanies surreal and horrific scenes of wrestling and crucifixion, mixed with Varela's video diaries. Willie Varela's early work had been marked by the artist's terror and outrage. Varela's films dealt with plastic manipulation, with scenes of daily life in El Paso and San Francisco, and with an autobiographical sensibility which casts him, like so many artists, under the sign of a bleeding Christ. While these characteristics of Varela's work have often been set to the service of love, charity, and the noble aspiration of trading visions and experiences, they are also marked by a pageant of death, a legacy of wounds, and a fury provoked by injustice and the devaluation of human life and perception. This Burning World is Varela's response to, among other things, the 9/11 terror attacks. But put more broadly, it is a vision of an ossifying global society, driven toward death, terrorism, environmental destruction, aspiring toward the end of life on Earth. Varela gathers images that reflect mortality, graphic medical procedures, pornography, news images of the towers falling. The world that he shows is one of greed and death. There is no reprieve. This stance is intensified through the film's dual screens, a diptych of onrushing horrors. Synthesized televisual signals, sometimes forming symmetries, combine with film strips that have been painted a messy, bloody red to form a recurring visual theme. Against this, scenes of professional wrestling, the fated Kennedy motorcade, Ku Klux Klan rallies, an invasive eye operation, and planes colliding with the World Trade Center come to embody the title, A Burning World of Miseries, All the Worst of Humanity. Late in the video, we are confronted with the word redemption, cast in the commercial lettering of a storefront name. Even redemption must be sold. This Burning World is largely unified with Varela's other work in video. His rhythms are staggered by a slow shutter. His manipulation of contrast emphasizes the plastic qualities of digital renderings of light. Through these acts, Varela has embraced the elasticity of video time, which can stretch in infinitesimal ways, but which soon no longer resembles that familiar imitation of life. These acts also reflect his embrace of the bleed of video light, which is distinct in its flatness, in its natural consonance with commercial images. This Burning World rejects depth, in part because it has been fashioned out of surface-deep images, rephotography, and ready symbols. But it also rejects depth in such a way that the dual screens become inflexible, so that the video images assume the impenetrable bas-relief of stone carvings. Varela's use of the diptych form suggests many things: an endorsement of dispersed attention, a citation to picture-in-picture news media, an act of forced similitude or equivalence. Varela is not ambivalent to these images, which shift between personal observations, archival materials, commercial and news images, declarations of his defiance and outrage. In practice, the dual screen is polyphonic, occasionally receding into pure abstraction. The calming effect of these abstract images, of pure white and blue symmetries, or of light patterns and refractions, or even just a pulsing screen, are countered by our confrontation with scenes that devalue life and perception. But to counter is not necessarily the intention in joining these screens. This is not a game of contrasts between rich valuations of human perception and scenes of despair. The whole of this burning world is weighted down by heavy omens, that this age of cruelty and menace is still only in its infancy,